Hello. What we did to Indians in America has been kept out of history books for a long time. Now that we're teaching again, and actually telling the truth. Have you heard about the Trail of Tears before? Basically, imagine if someone conquered America and made everyone on the East Coast or around it march to a new place, barefoot in the freezing cold, because they didn't want us there and they wanted it. That's what happened to the Native Americans. What the U.S. government did to the Native Americans was very sad. They killed thousands of Indians from the trail, changed their culture, and affected the way they live to this day. America wanted to expand because they wanted to make more money, so they wanted to head west. The problem was Indians were living out west and wanted their land. So they started working with the Indians. They actually lived together for a while, but then they just wanted to keep moving them out. People were scared of them because they were known as savages, but they were just protecting the land. They started working with Indians to get fur done. The fur trade was big back then. They used Indians because they were good at hunting and skinning animals for the fur. The problem with that was there's so many Indians hunting for the fur and animals that it was hard to get it. And when they would go into debt, the only way they could pay it back was by giving the government their land. It don't matter how many people in the tribe were in debt. If there's one person's tribe was, the whole tribe had to pay for it and give the government their land. That's when it started expanding. Also, the gold rush affected it really badly because they lived on the areas with gold, and the government wanted that and just kicked them out. People were in the Indian groups were split about leaving. Some wanted to stay and fight for their land. Others just wanted to leave and keep peace with the government. The first tribe to leave was the Choctaw tribe. They went, and 15,000 of them went on the trail to Oklahoma. They told them if they went to the east of the Mississippi or the west of the Mississippi, they would not bother them and they could live in Oklahoma and have their own land. So they did that because they knew they could not beat the U.S. government if they went to war. The Seminole were the biggest pain for the government. They won so many battles against them. They actually won a 7-year war against the government, and they just gave them a huge cash reward for them to move out of Florida. The culturized that were someone with the government would be the Seminoles, the Choctaw, the Chickasaw, the Creeks, and then the Cherokee tribes. Those are the ones who would work with them. Andrew Jackson became president in 1829, and he's the one that started the Indian Removal Acts, and he did not like Indians. He was very bad to them, obviously, with them moving out. He actually fought a war in New Orleans, Battle of New Orleans, where 15,000 Indians fought with him, and he moved them out west, the ones who actually fought with him, helped him in the war. Cherokee tribe was the next one. They lived in Georgia, so it was a pretty far march for them on this trail. 2,000 left at first. After 2,000 left, then they brought the army in to get the rest out. And as they hurried them up, told them, if you don't get out now, we're going to kill you. So they didn't have time to get anything for their trip. Nothing. On that trip, as they're leaving their houses, they just watch all the soldiers loot their houses and all their belongings, and they'd just be horrible. I couldn't imagine that. Many of them died on the way there. 5,000 out of the 18,000 Cherokee people died on the path of the Trail of Tears due to sicknesses like smallpox, whooping cough. You got hypothermia, killed many Indians. The soldiers were asked and shared stories, and they said it scarred them, talking about children waving goodbye to their homes and they'll never see them again. His families dying together. It was just horrible. And they would bury 14 to 15 bodies at each post they would stop at. They'd march like 10 miles a day. They all went to Oklahoma. Effects from the Trail of Tears is the Indian population went down horribly bad. They did make some money. They found some stuff to do, but it was very hard for them to get situated because you got to learn how to live a new life, learn how to farm, you got to learn how to hunt, the landscape, everything. once they started to get stuff in Oklahoma, they started to go to school. Cherokees did very well in school. They did so well that white parents noticed and actually put their white kids in the Cherokee schools because they were doing so good. They went to college. 1890, Pennsylvania made their own school for the Cherokee. They're just really good in school, but with that, they're learning how to be white. They spoke their language and their language only for the longest time, and now they had to learn English. They had to get their haircut. They had to get white names, just completely getting rid of their culture, and it was very sad. They were called the golden era of Indians, but Cherokee wouldn't see it like that because they were getting rid of their culture. So they started making their own government. The old government was just 3 chiefs and no constitution. Their new government, when they crossed the went east or west of the Mississippi, they had their own constitution, a Supreme Court. Their government was really well, but the old Indians would refuse to listen to it and actually caused a civil war. The U.S. government had to get in, they had to sign a treaty, everything was good. Then the Civil War happened, and 1/3 of the Indian population in the Civil War got demolished, wiped out. They were technically with the Confederates, but really they were with the Union, and they actually had to pay for the Civil War, which is one of the bloodiest U.S. wars in U.S. history. And they had to give up more of their land to the U.S. government. They made Indians turn into farmers instead of hunters, because when they're farmers, they use up less land. Instead, when they're hunters, they need more land to hunt. But if they were farmers, they got their own little plot of land, so I guess that was kind of nice, but they still had to move out there. So yeah, that was a really bad part of their life too, and the numbers were bad of Indians. I wanted to learn some new stuff about how Indians live today, so I started watching videos, and according to BBC, Indians hate the name, but they interviewed Native Americans. They do not like America. They want nothing to do with it. They do not like being called Native Americans. They don't like their names being in sports, like Chicago Blackhawks, Cleveland Indians. They do not like that. And nowadays, they all struggle bad. They have one of the highest suicide rates in total, and they have the highest suicide rates in youth. What their problems are now is they have horrible addictions with alcohol and drugs, and it causes a lot of hardships for the Indians' youth, the natives. My girlfriend is actually 25% Cherokee, and I asked her about her family because I never met them because they don't talk to them, and they say they all struggle with alcoholism and drugs. And so they just really struggle nowadays. In conclusion, we've learned about how thousands of Indians died on the trail of the Tears, Oklahoma, how their culture's been ripped out, and how their lives are changed today. Hopefully they can figure everything out and be stronger for the future. Thank you for listening.